Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Broker, and I'm here with Jeffrey Poole and Joe Lalo, and this week it's just the three of us. We're going to we have some questions to answer from listeners, even though we make it really hard to find ourselves because we still don't have a contact form. They are very gifted listeners, and they find us. And then we have some notes that I took on at the RWA Con. I just picked like 4 panels to share notes with, share it with you guys. Selling more on iBooks, some stuff on foreign rights and sales and translations in other countries, and doing box sets and using pre-orders to make bestseller lists. And then just a panel was somebody, like a bunch of best-selling authors, talking about mistakes they'd made, and I thought there were some gems in there that I'll share them, and the guys will chime in. And the parakeets will also chime in that are in the background right now.
You mean you actually came across mistakes that we haven't covered yet? Because I thought for certain we've hit them all.
No, well, these people were more advanced than we were. These were best-selling authors with their 7-figure whatever incomes. And I don't know what much they make, but they'd had some new ones. All right.
Great, bring it on.
But why don't we see if we have any news yet? Joe, do you want to talk about your news first? Joe, do you want to unmute yourself and talk about your news?
First. First, one piece of new news. I've got a new webcam now, so I'm screwing up all over the place, but I'll be used to it by next week. I had a BookBub promo on Friday, and it briefly pushed me up to the top of the sci-fi fantasy on various places, so that was cool. As I said to Lindsay, this was kind of a weird situation, because I have, as we've spoken about, if you have a long series with a low price intro, it's best to advertise the first one. And I tried to put my series starters up, the free series starters, and they rejected both of them. So more or less out of spite, I put up the less intelligent choice, which was the first book of a series with only 2 books. So, of course, they selected that one. So while I had a good, it was also the first time I ever did a promo that wasn't free. It was 99 cents. So it was an experiment, and it paid for itself within the first day, which it always does. And it's definitely had a positive impact, but as you might imagine, not nearly as big of an impact as it could have had if it was one of the free series starters with a much longer series. So, but anyhow, very happy with how that turned out regardless. And the other thing I've got going on is more swag. I now have bookmarks, which I've been sending to people, and that's pretty cool. And I got the back on here; it's upside down. I got 2-sided, and they're glossy, like very fancy.
And so you have the website on there too. I think I saw that.
I got the website on there at the bottom, and also the website of the artist, because most of this art on here he's responsible for, and I want him to get his fair publicity.
Fair is fair.
And I also I made sure to ask before I did this if he was okay with me giving them out. And usually with an artist, promo stuff is okay, but if you want to sell it, then you need to negotiate a different price. So these are only for giveaway, and I made that clear to him. And I'm also going to be doing some more stuff in the future, so probably in the next couple of months you'll see me holding up different colorful things at the beginning of podcasts.
Nice.
This will continue to be extremely exciting for those listening on the audio only.
Yeah. Well, come visit the site. You can see the video there.
All right, yeah. Come visit and watch the first 5 minutes for Joe's
show and tell
merchandise and everything else he's got planned. All right. I was going to say the same thing, though, Joe. I'm going to do a series where I only have 2 books out and a novella, and I thought I'd try to get a book by bad, too, and do it 99 cents. I figure I can do a free one later when there's more books out, and then a box set, kind of work through the whole thing, so I think it's fine.
Yeah. Like I say, it paid for itself, so it wasn't a bad choice, but it just wasn't as impactful as it could have been.
Right. Jeff, did you have anything you want to share?
I have officially finished my 8th novel, and I'm getting ready to hand it over to my wife so she can rip it full of holes and therefore give it back to me so I can give it out to some beta readers and whatnot. But for me, that would be essentially the second complete full-length book I've completed this particular year, and I'm pretty sure I can get a 3rd one out by the end of the year. So hooray for me, who used to have just 1 a year.
Congratulations. And you're still working full-time, right? So that's...
Mm-hmm.
All right, good stuff. Well, for my news, I thought I'd kind of talk about my pen name was in a multi-author box set a couple weeks ago. I mean, it's still going on, but we launched it at 99 cents with, I think we have 12 authors in there, and it's a weird mix because it's kind of basically contemporary romance, except there's two of us with space opera romance in there, and the theme was like treasure hunters and adventure, something like that. But I was just like, okay, my pen name has no notoriety and isn't famous, so she'd be happy to be in a box set. And we wrote all new novellas for it in the hope that all of our collective fans would go out and buy it. And the people I was in it with, we didn't really have any big heavy hitters, but we were thinking, I don't really care, but some of the people were like, let's try to make a list, let's try getting a USA Today bestsellers list. And by using pre-orders, we were able to make that happen. We had it on pre-order. I just did a big blog post about this too, kind of like if you want to follow the strategy, and we'll talk about it a little more when I'm talking about that panel. But if you want to do, we did like two months pre-order at least that was out there. So we were able to get, over time, a couple thousand pre-order sales, and adding on to that with us throwing everything behind it on the launch day, I think we had about 10,000 sales. This is 99 cents, remember, a 12-author box set, but it was good enough to get like 88 on the USA Today bestseller list, which is cool because my pen name has never been listed anywhere. And but I will say that with that, it fell off the rankings pretty quickly on Amazon, whereas if you just were worried about the rankings and selling more books, it might be better to not do the pre-order thing. I think I was talking about this a bit last week, and just throw everything out there and try to get all those sales within like a couple days. But definitely if you get to the point where you have a popular series and you're thinking, I could possibly sell maybe 8,000 copies, and you could get a list if you could get all those sales reported in 1 week. If you got some at, you need to get reported in at least 2 places. Amazon can be one, obviously, and then you kind of need Barnes & Noble or iTunes also to report in order to qualify for a list. So you need, like, I've heard 500 sales on those sites before they'll actually report your sales numbers. So just some things to think about, and yeah, I'll talk about that more in my notes down below. But I'm kind of now seeing how people actually get on these lists who are fantasy authors and not like super popular romance authors. Like, they're popular fantasy authors, but you don't really think of us as selling a gazillion books on release week. But with the traditional publishers, I know they can be on Amazon with a pre-order, 9 months, a year out. Sometimes I see stuff and I'm like, wow, I'm so not interested in that because it's not coming out for 9 months, so there's no way I'm that tempted to order it. But just something to think about. All right, if you guys don't have any comments on that, we're going to go into some listener questions and comments. First one, Joe, do you want to read? We talked about Vellum a while back, and John L. Monk sent an email to Joe about his experience with it.
Yep. Well, first, congratulations on listing. That's super cool. And I know that you're not usually after the line on your resume, but now it's there, so you can use it when you feel like it.
I totally have used it since then, but yeah, I'd rather just have the readers generally, but thank you.
All right, so yeah, John L. Monk, who has been a vocal fan, and we thank him for his support. He heard us talking about Vellum, which is an ebook creation piece of software for Mac, and he gave it a try, and these were his thoughts. I write my books in both Word and Scrivener, and usually do the formatting via the Guido Hinkle guides, adding HTML tags and all that jazz. Lots of fun, but tedious to make sweeping changes to. After installing Vellum, I imported a Word doc and watched as, like magic, the document split across all chapters into the most beautiful ebook I'd seen this side of Random House. Honest to goodness drop caps, special formatting for the first word of each sentence, and section break, and lots of fleurons to choose from. If you don't already know, fleurons are those little graphics between sections within a chapter. Even the title page was beautiful, and it auto-created tables of contents and hyperlinks to the chapters. So he had a lot more to say about it, but overall it seems like it's, if you are interested in generating your own ebooks and you really want them to be pretty, it seems like Vellum is a valid choice for you.
All right, and next we're going to move on to, we have a couple questions from, 3 questions from readers today. First 2 from Teresa Barker, who lives in the Seattle area, and I might actually be meeting her here. We're going to maybe have coffee in a week or so. But she asked about pen names. How do you start using one? Do you just put the pen name on your book cover, etc., before publishing it? Are there any other logistical considerations when you're not using your legal name as your author name? And I guess this one is for me, because I don't know if you guys have any secret pen names yet. You haven't told me. But it kind of depends on the store. Some places it's really simple. In Amazon, you just do the regular KDP dashboard thing, and you make up the author name. That's about it. It's really simple, and yeah, I would say that's really easy. But a couple of the stores, will want a separate account, and it might be easier. Like, I think instead of trying to wrestle with it on Barnes & Noble, I just had my pen name go through Smashwords, and I did have to make a separate Smashwords account for her, but I just used the same PayPal address, and I think that was something like, if I didn't want a publisher account because something like the titles show up together on the Smashwords page if they're under the same account, something like that. I was trying for anonymity at the time, which kind of worked. The only place that kind of outed me was, sorry, did you?
Didn't someone here actually announce your pen name over one of the podcasts?
Maybe, but at the time I had a secret for like the first 3 months. I was kind of proving that, yeah, you can just start today and you can sell books and that sort of thing. So it was about 3 months before I let the news out. But Kobo was the only one that kind of outed me a little bit, but I didn't have any readers on Kobo for the pen name stuff, so it probably didn't matter. But I did the same thing there, where you just put a different author name and it's under the same account. But at the very first, in the first couple of days, they were showing the pen name books next to like my regular books. Like, if you like this book, you might also like this book. And since they were science fiction romance instead of epic fantasy, it was kind of a weird little link, but that faded after a while, I think. So, but see, what other legal considerations? Yeah, most places make it pretty easy. And like I said, if it's going to be a problem, if they do want like a bank account in your pen name's name, you can get around that by going through the distribution sites. Smashwords did not care, and I'm pretty sure Drafted Digital doesn't care either, seeing as how somebody was selling my books there who wasn't me. So but I don't know what happens when you go to get paid, but
geez, you're not going to let that one go, are you?
Nope, but I still appreciate that the Drafted Digital guys took it down really quickly when I emailed them. At the time I was thinking this might be hard to prove this is me, since it's just a totally made up name.
I was going to ask you too, with regards to what Teresa asked there, perhaps you could explain, even though I already know it, how you came up with your pen name.
My pen name, which is rather silly, Ruby Lyons Drake, was actually a reader just tweeted me. For some reason I was talking about pen names or something, and she came up with that. It's all the letters in my regular name switched around. So I thought that was pretty clever, and I thought that sounded like a nice smut writing pen name. So I was just saving. I was like, someday I'm going to write some romance, and that's going to be it.
Yeah, because I know there's several online anagram makers, so it'll be interesting just to punch in the letters of your name, see what it comes back with.
Well, we want to hear about it, Jeff. Whatever you get for next week for your romances that I know you're going to write.
Yeah, right. I'll get right on that. I'll keep you posted.
All right. Hopefully that kind of answered the question. It's not really a pro on it all yet, so maybe somebody else would have a better answer. But so far, I haven't had any real legal issues or anything like that. So her second question was just about podcasts. She was noticing that a number of our guests have them, and she thinks she originally found us in the App Store searching for science fiction, but she was wondering how to get a podcast into the App Store, or if it's a good idea to put it on YouTube, etc., because she's thinking of doing one. And if we're in the App Store, that's surprising. I think that it probably just shows up when you do a search. I think podcasts show up in TV shows and music, anything that's got that in there. We should just be in their podcast directory, and you basically, if you like Google how to submit your iTunes or how to submit your podcast to iTunes, it'll walk you through it. It is kind of a bit of a technical pain in the butt if you've never done it before. Just it's easy if all you want is hosting. You can go to Libsyn, libsyn.com, to get podcast hosting, and they are good because they don't charge based on bandwidth. Which, if you're doing podcasting, you start to get a lot of downloads. It's a really big bandwidth hog, so you don't want to be with a web host that is going to charge you per however many gigs or whatever. So, and they have it on their site where you can submit a podcast to iTunes and probably the other places just by uploading your files directly there and writing your description and that kind of thing. It's one of those things that once you get it set up, it's pretty easy. You just do the same thing each week. We wanted a website, and I wanted to do it as blog posts using WordPress, which is pretty easy to install, but it's another thing. You can have someone do it if that's not your thing. And I think there's a podcast plugin I grabbed. And so each week I just put those tags like podcast and put our link in there. And then I submitted to the feed to feedburner.com. See, this is complicated. This does not sound fun, does it? But I would just say, so we're going through feedburner.com to get into the podcast directories out there. And Feedburner just monitors your stats and makes it easy. But I'm sure someone else out there who has a podcast is like, oh my gosh, they made it really hard on themselves. But I would just check out, there's, I think it's still out there. I don't know if it's been updated recently, but there's a Podcasting for Dummies book that I remember reading a few years ago. Jeff's like, yeah, Dummies books rock.
Seriously.
They're a good place to start. I'm like, I'll read those, no problem. And that's probably a good place just to get a good overview of it. The guy who wrote it, at least the edition I read, was T. Morris, and he does steampunk, so you're like supporting a science fiction person, so there you go.
And we should also add mention on there, if we can do it, you guys can do it. So just Google what you need to learn how to do, and he'll walk you through. It's a lot easier than the way we've described it.
Or if you go on Fiverr, you can probably pay somebody $5 to do it for you, or maybe get a smart neighborhood kid next door, you know. But yeah, I do think it's a good idea. It's because it is actually a little more challenging, complicated, / time consuming to do. You'll find that there's less competition for podcasts than there are for blogs. So especially if you find a little niche, like we kind of did, you might get a small audience, but you probably get a really targeted audience. So, you know, I think she was saying she has a sci-fi fantasy reading series they're starting, you know, and it could be something to help promote authors. And, you know, if you do it year in and year out, you develop a following, and maybe you can even get invited to talk to some of the big name authors at cons and that kind of thing. I know, like Moses Sierragard III, he's got, I think it's a science fiction fantasy something reader podcast. I haven't listened in a couple of years, and I'm not even sure if they're still going, but he's interviewed like everybody, George R. Martin, all those guys. He just shows up in cons like, hey dude, I have a podcast, can I interview you? So if that's your thing, go for it. I have to get over my introvert ways to approach somebody at a con, though. All right, one more question before we jump into the notes. Jeff, you can read this one.
Alrighty, this one is from a friend of mine from a Goodreads Club, club that I admittedly should be paid more attention to. It hadn't been in a while. His name is Eric Knowles, and he writes, regarding short stories, I have a collection of stories, each about 9,000 words, involving the same cast of characters, much like a TV show. If you know the TV show Archer, you'll have an idea of style, tone, and humor. From a marketing standpoint, should I publish these stories separately or as a collection? My original idea was to bundle 4 to 5 stories under a single cover and sell it as a book. But is that the best way to go? I have and I need to scroll here. I have the first 3 stories finished and a 4th almost finished. To drum up some interest, I posted the first story on Amazon's Write On website, similar to Wattpad. So far, I have a fan. It may be just the one, but I'll take that. If you're all curious, it provides a link. And no worries if this question doesn't fit the podcast. Keep up the good work. Eric, from personal experience, I mean, I'm not too certain how many different books you have out there, but with regards to short stories, I mean, for instance, I've got a full-length epic fantasy novel, well over 100,000 words, and I've got that thing knocked as a permafree there, and then I've got several short stories, but I feel like I'd be gypping the reader if you release a short story that's, say, 9,000 words long for, let's say, 99 cents, and then you turn around and you have a full-length novel for $2.99. You're like, and I don't think I'm actually getting what I'm paying for here, but that's just me. Usually with my own personal opinion is I'll have a couple of short stories, kind of bundle them together like you were suggesting, and then release that, and then you can actually charge something for it. But that's my opinion.
All right, go ahead. Joe, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I agree. Bundling them together is probably the best way to do it. People are going to feel like they're getting better value. Plus, there's actually a pretty good precedent for books, especially the first books produced by an author, to be a collection of shorter stories. The Color of Magic is Terry Pratchett's first Discworld book, and it's, I think, 3 short stories that feature the same characters, and they're relatively contiguous. So you're in good company if you decide to enter the writing world like that. And yeah, generally speaking, longer sells better.
All right. My advice would be to do both things, to put them out as 99-cent short stories on their own, but also put out the bundle of 5 or whatever you end up having, and make that maybe $2.99. So it's a really good deal for the reader because they see, oh, it's 99 cents if I have to buy them individually. And that way you get up into the 70% royalty range because they're probably more likely to pick up the story or the bundle. Or maybe they read one, the first one. You might want to make one free someday, and you can just make the short story free, the first one, instead of having to make the whole collection free that way. So, because I've actually done a series of novellas kind of like that. They're longer than that, but they're like 20 to 30,000 words. I think one was 40,000 words, and I put the first 3 into a box set together, and I think it looks like a better deal that way to people. So the only thing is that if you're doing that, you have to pay for covers for all of them. If they're that close together, if they're like it almost sounds like a serial kind of thing, like you were saying, a TV show, then you might be able to do something where it's basically the same cover. You just put 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe you change the font color or something. Something I can put a link to in the show notes is somebody did a guest post for me once on getting covers done from finding people on Fiverr. Speaking of Fiverr. And he actually had these really amazing steampunk covers. He did a lot of the kind of work himself, and he got the files so he could manipulate them for future ones. But if you're trying to do it for a 99-cent short story, it definitely makes sense to try to figure out how to go cheap on the covers. So there you go. Do it all. Make more work for yourself. That's my suggestion.
Great advice, Lindsay. All right. All right. Thanks, Eric, for the question.
All right, I guess we can move into the notes that I wanted to share with y'all. The first discussion that I have notes for was kind of a panel on foreign rights, trying to sell stuff to foreign publishers versus there weren't too many people suggesting you do it yourself, and the reason is that it costs, the guy said upwards of $10,000 to get a novel. And in addition to that, you got to pay for an editor afterwards because they're still going to be editing, just like when we do the process. It might not be that expensive in every country, but I know when I've had people approach me, I think I've talked about this a couple of times on my blog, and so I've gotten emails, and that's in the ballpark. I don't think I've heard less than like 6,000-7,000, and it can make sense if you're selling a lot. Some of the romance authors at this convention had done it. If you're making selling tens of thousands of copies of a book every month, and maybe it makes a lot of sense, especially if you see that your sales are really good in Germany, or they were saying that historical fiction does well in Turkey and Japan, and I don't know if the same is true for historical romance, but something to think about. But you can actually, as an indie author, sell your rights, something Joe has some experience with, to a specific country or a publisher in a specific country that approaches you. I don't know, did you want to talk about, you had a little experience with that, Joe?
Sure. I've done this twice now. One of them is still pending. If you listen to the site, you know that I have sold the rights for the Book of Deacon trilogy to a company in Bulgaria for translation, and that went through, and I got paid my advance. I haven't gotten any sales updates since, which is, well, eventually I'll give them a nudge. I really haven't asked for the sales numbers, but they're supposed to do it automatically. But this was a case where they wanted the rights, so I didn't have to pay for the translation. But instead, what I did was, they make the money off of it, and then it's like a traditional publishing deal. And you got to be. I gave the contract to a lawyer to look at to make sure that it wasn't. Actually, they let me write my own contract. So that was nice, but you make sure the contract was good. And I also, the one that's pending now is German rights for the trilogy. I forgot the name of the company that's doing that. And again, rather than paying to have it translated and then getting it published, they're handling everything on their side in exchange for basically a much smaller advance and probably a smaller slice of the profits. But it's a small slice of something as opposed to all of nothing. So I was kind of okay with that.
Yeah, I've actually got a German contract that I need to have someone look over too for the first Emperor's Edge book, and that came about as a fan happened to be a German translator, or is that that's the term for written? I think so.
Yes.
German translator, and I wanted to do the first book in the series, and I was like, okay. My first thought was that we would go through BabbleCube or some site that works it all out, and I would just publish it independently. And she did it, and a few months later sent it back to me, and she actually said, I want to talk to a publisher in Germany and see if we can get somebody interested. And I'll have to update you all with this. I really need to get that contract looked at, and because yeah, it's fine with me, because it costs so much. I probably never would get around to doing it on my own. And apparently, this is actually pretty common, at least in some countries, where the translator can actually be the person to spearhead things, and will go to the publisher and talk to them, because they want new authors, and if they see you're doing well in another country, chances are it might do well there. But as far as like us cold calling, like some random person in Turkey or Serbia or something, it'd probably be just like contacting randomly publishers here. They're like, yeah, whatever, you're in the slush pile. So, but if it's something you're interested in, you have a decent sized mailing list, it wouldn't hurt to email your people and just put it out there. You never know who's going to have what skills or know a contact or that kind of thing. So, but and you definitely can do it yourself. I think someday we'll have to get Joanna Penn on here. She has her own show, The Creative Penn, you probably listen to, but I know she's actually paid for, or I think she's doing a royalty split for translations for some of her books. So we'll have to get her on and kind of see how that went. I think BabbleCube is the site where you can do that now, do the royalty split, and I think Amazon is testing something out too. Like they'll put you in touch with possible translators who might be interested. And there was another panel kind of that discussed this stuff with Mark Lefebvre from Kobo and Dan Wood from Drafted Digital, and kind of it sounded like there's stuff's getting improved, but they were saying right now like BabbleCube and stuff's probably not there yet, just because it's really hard to vet these people and make sure you're going to get a really good high quality product. And it's hard obviously for you to proofread it later and make sure it was good if you don't speak multiple languages. So that was kind of something there. But both panels that I was on, they were saying, yeah, this is something to look into, because the foreign markets are like 2 to 3 years behind with ebooks. So some of them are coming on strong now. And if you do have a series and you're able to get them interested in the first book, maybe they'll want to do the whole thing and grab your backlist. It's happening. People are definitely making deals with indie authors. There were quite a few people who had, they're indie in the US, they're keeping all their ebook rights here and their North American rights, but they had sold some of their foreign rights. And, if you have a series, it's usually not a lot of money, as I think Joe can attest with the Bulgarian publisher, especially for a little country. But if you're doing a whole series, and if it's money that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise, why not?
Absolutely.
One disclaimer I was going to mention real quick is for those that are interested in getting their books translated to another language, there is an option, and I don't do it because I got a good laugh out of someone that speaks Spanish, but there is an option buried inside one of the word processors I was using. I think it might have been Word 2007. Where you can actually have Microsoft and Bing attempt to translate it for you. And I haven't heard someone laugh this hard in quite some time. He's like, I asked him, what is the feasibility of this? And he's like, well, try translating a page, or I could, a page of your book, and then email it to me, and I'll see what I do. And he wrote back and says, man, that's like baby talk. Don't do it. I'm like, okay, so anyone that's listening, if you found the option, don't do it. Do it professionally.
Yeah, they said the same thing at the panel, I guess. Or they were just saying you can't even have something that's very literal, because there are things they would use this as an example, like the word fanny pack, which is here, it's a pouch that you wear on above your butt on your belt. Apparently it meant something really dirty in the UK. I can't remember what it was, but the example was she was asking some 12-year-old kid about, oh, I like your fanny pack, and he was just like scandalized, because it means something naughty.
And how do you know that the fanny pack doesn't get translated into something that literally means ass pouch or something? I mean, you're like, excuse me? So just got to be careful.
Yeah, definitely good to have someone that knows what they're doing the translation. And apparently you can actually find agencies out there that do foreign rights deals exclusively. So if you're selling well enough to, maybe that's something you can look into. Of course, they didn't give any names, like check out this agent or this agent. So you have to do your research. But and then there was another thing too, like if somebody approached you and you didn't want to get an agent because it's kind of a one-time deal with one country, one publisher, that you could look for something called a contract consultant, which would just specialize in this kind of thing. And they said don't hire an entertainment lawyer for like movies and Hollywood stuff, but you want to get somebody. So any final thoughts on that stuff, guys?
Well, did we actually answer that question, like which markets are worth doing the translation to? It sounds like Germany would be a good one.
Let me skim back up there. So some of the ones that they had recommended, and remember this was a romance thing, so it's probably going to be a little different for fantasy and science fiction, but they said Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and then for historical stuff, Turkey and Japan. My personal thing would be, I would say Germany, just because I have a lot of English sales there, or English language sales there.
Yeah, so do I, oddly enough.
It's a big country, and the language is spoken all around it, so and they love their fantasy. They have a lot of death metal bands over there, I don't know, singing about dragons and things.
We also love Hasselhoff, though, so they're all over, you know?
That's true.
They just went downhill in my eyes.
I'll tell you, I know just because I follow games kind of closely and I listen to a lot of game news and stuff too. They'll use a term EFGs, which is EFIGS, English, French, Italian, German, and Spanish. And if you want to hit the maximum market for any given digital item, those are the 5 languages that you need to hit. And it seems fairly accurate. It's not in order of importance because I think we can all agree, as we said, Germany is probably, in our case, the biggest non-English language to target. Although this is a thing actually I heard about when we were talking rights when I was at Book Expo. Be careful with languages like Portuguese, because if you give up Portuguese language rights, then you are going to give up rights to every country that speaks Portuguese, and you think, well, Portugal's a small country. Yeah, but Brazil speaks Portuguese, so it's actually an enormous market. So it's like you're going to want to when you're giving up translation rights, just be careful and make sure that you're only giving up the rights to the portion of the world that you actually want them to have the rights for. So
translation, get a lawyer to look at it.
Yeah, there are little special terms that lawyers will catch that you might not.
EFIGs, yeah, that's about right, because of my international sales, those are the ones that sell the best.
Yep.
I do remember Portugal being mentioned as watch out for that. All right, should we move on? The next panel that I have on here on my notes was kind of just some of the mistakes that some of the big sellers had made. Mistakes being like if you want to sell a lot, if you just want to do your own thing and do the best you can, there's nothing wrong with that. So, but one of the things was just kind of respect the tropes and to give people what they want. I'm sure that's really true in romance, but I can see that in fantasy too. Like if you're killing main characters, like the main character, or if you make it look like there's going to be a romance between 2 characters, but then you do it a different way and piss people off. People kind of like their formula story. So epic quest, the good guy should win in the end, and if you do something different, that's fine, but it does tend to be the stuff that's really kind of that classic hero's journey, and that tends to be easier to sell. So I don't know, do you guys ever break that stuff? And
I've not really. I mean, it's one of those things where if they're expecting like a fight scene, if they're expecting the bad guy to get it in the end, the last thing you want to do is throw a twist in there that's going to tick them off, because, man, they'll crucify your butt in the reviews.
Yeah, this is a situation where I agree. I don't like make a checklist of tropes and do all of those, but I don't avoid them. Basically, I write what I would like to read, and I have fairly unsophisticated tastes in that regard. But it's one of these situations where I have broken the rules and written something that nobody, that violates tropes, or at least uses tropes that you wouldn't expect. And broadly speaking, they're my lowest performers. So, yeah, tropes are not bad. Don't be different just to be different, unless you are expecting experimental results, which could be very good or very bad. If you want consistent results, then do what others are consistently doing. There's a reason they're doing it.
Respect the tropes.
Well, and if you're just trying to think like what should I write? If you're really early on, just go over to the top 100 in your category in Amazon and see what's selling. We always want to be really creative and new and do something different as authors, and we actually kind of heard that if you ever came in from traditional publishing and trying to sell stories to magazines and that kind of thing. But those orcs and werewolves and knights on quests, and I don't know, I haven't actually looked at the top 100 for several months, but it's usually wizards and mages and dragons and warriors.
Of course you don't have to look, you're already there.
I'm not usually there. But anyway, so go take a look and see what's selling. And it's not, we're not saying like copy what everybody's doing, but if you have two ways you might go, maybe the one that's closer to what's popular out there might be worth checking out first. One of the other mistakes that one of the people said was this: don't give away your rights cheaply. If somebody does come to you and say like, hey, do you want to publish with Amazon or like 47 North for sci-fi fantasy, or another small press comes to you, or even a big guy, and they say, here's what we're willing to offer you, your $3,000 advance or something, and we're going to tie up your rights for years and years or indefinitely. Even if you're just getting started, don't sell it cheap, they were saying, because some of them had done that and then they became big names and they can never get those books back, or they can't get them back for 7 years, and they basically sold the rights really cheaply. Whereas if they'd kept it and self-published it themselves, they could have been making like 5-10 times as much on that title once they became a bigger name. Joe, did you have something about contracts you wanted to mention?
Yeah. One of the only times I've ever made a change to a contract, and I haven't really dealt with too many contracts, but there's two things I was told to watch out for, and both of them showed up in the same contract once. One of them was if they don't put in a specified duration, then they basically are getting it for the duration of the copyright, which is like 75 years or something like that, like 35 on the inside. So you don't, make sure that the duration is specified and try to get it as short as possible. 7 is fairly traditional. 10 is not too far outside. I'm not a lawyer. There's the disclaimer. Go talk to a lawyer if you want actual advice, but this is what I've noticed. And the other one is, if you see ancillary rights, like, oh, we're going to get, digital publishing rights plus ancillary rights. Ancillary rights is literally everything else besides publishing rights. So if you sell them your ancillary rights, you're giving them the rights. If it's ever made into a movie, they get a big chunk of that. If it's a big chunk is, hopefully, they might get everything. So ancillary rights, no. Make them specify what rights they're going to get and make sure it's only the rights you want to sell. Yeah, I've had to tick off both of those things in a contract not too long ago, and the guy just replied with, "Oh, I can see that you're an experienced businessman." Like, yes, that's me, experienced businessman.
Meaning we've been burned before. We know the keywords to look for here.
All right, I'm going to send my German contract over to Joe to take a look to make sure it's cool. All right, next thing was just regarding like Facebook and Twitter. They'd kind of learned that make sure when you're on there on your author page, your author account, that you be the author and that you're kind of there to entertain, not just talk about your life or religion, politics, whatever. Some authors do that anyway, or just don't care, but it's probably the best idea to separate kind of your brand from who you are as a person and have a personal Facebook account if you want to, but on your author page, you're there. It's part of the experience. They're following you because they want updates on the book. They want to, like she said, they want to be entertained. So just stay focused on the branding when you're doing your social media stuff. All right, and for Facebook ads, there was something they mentioned was to recommend, if you're going to try advertising, listen to some of the internet marketing podcasts out there that actually talk about it for small businesses kind of oriented, because that's what we are basically. And they recommended Amy Porterfield has a blog and a podcast on social media marketing, and I'll put the link in the show notes to her site. I've heard that one recommended a lot for Facebook stuff in particular, so I'm going to have to add that to my feed and listen now and then. Do you guys have any thoughts on branding, Facebook/Twitter stuff?
Well, I don't use Twitter myself, and I haven't. Every time I think about trying an ad with Facebook, we always get a guest on here that says, don't do it, it's not worth the time. So I haven't tried one yet. I'm still up in the air if I want to try one.
As for me, I typically I don't separate my author and personal stuff very much because I am an author, so my personal stuff is mostly author anyway. I have a personal Facebook page and a fan page, so those two are separate. But my Twitter handle is whatever I feel like talking about, which tends to be books, and I haven't had any complaints about going off topic, although lately dentistry has been showing up. So if you've been following me and following the exploits of my dental hijinks, I apologize, I guess, if it's annoying you. But broadly speaking, I try to keep things entertaining, and I don't get political or religious because I'm not political or religious, but topics that are challenging are something I would avoid anyway, just because I don't want to challenge people. I want to entertain them.
I've definitely seen it where authors will be like using their author platform to be like, oh, save these puppies at these puppy mills, or like causes, which it's up to you if you want to do that or not. But you think something really innocent like that, like who doesn't want to save puppies? You're pissing somebody off that somebody's like, geez, not another stupid puppy mill charity or something. So it's tough. I usually, on Facebook, I'm really good about just posting about the books and stuff. It wouldn't even occur to me to talk about anything else, and I post snippets of what I'm working on. Twitter, yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'm talking to readers and people who I've come to know through the books, so I actually talk to almost nobody on Twitter that is not from the author side of things. So that's one place my parents haven't found yet, so I'm safe from the family. But yeah, I think that's pretty good advice to stay away from that stuff. And one of the things they recommended was actually, and I have not done this, it's divide things up by pen name and really brand every genre that you're going to write in. And even if you're doing like urban fantasy versus epic fantasy, you may want to have different names for that. Assuming you're going to do enough of a series that you're going to, have enough books to gain some traction. And, they weren't saying you couldn't tell your audience, like I'm also writing under this name. But just as far as when somebody looks you up on Amazon, I've got like a bug flying around, so sorry if I keep swatting myself, you guys. There's a mosquito. Speaking of fidgeting, we were talking about that before the show. But yeah, using a different pen name for basically every series you write that's not in the same genre. So something to consider. I have not always done that. I've got a contemporary mystery just randomly out there, and I've got some middle grade short stories out there. And I do admit that once you get like more novels, it gets kind of cluttered if somebody comes looking on your Amazon page going, what else by this author would I like to read? And then they see a lot of stuff that maybe isn't quite the genre that's for them. So I don't disagree with it. I think it's probably okay if you didn't do it that way, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, I know we've talked about it before. I was thinking, like when I try maybe my hand at writing something different besides an epic fantasy, I always sign my name on the books Jeffrey M. Poole. Maybe I'll try J. M. Poole if I ever want to try sci-fi, or maybe Jeff M. Poole if I want to try something else. But just, my way, I don't really feel like creating like a fake name or anything, but it's something I was thinking about doing. You're right. When you look at the list of books that author has done, okay, well, Jeffrey M. Poole, there's all the fantasy ones. He's released a couple as J. M. Poole. I wonder what these ones are. Oh, these ones are like sci-fi, not fantasy. Okay. Just something I was considering anyways.
I think Ian Banks, who does sci-fi and fantasy, I think he releases them as Ian Banks and Ian M. Banks, depending on which genre it is, which is something that I thought was cool and something that I potentially would have done, except I got a weird thing where my name shows up as Joseph Lalo or Joseph R. Lalo in different locations for different reasons, so I sort of can't do that anymore.
One of the things the gal mentioned, I think it was Deanna Chase who was talking about this, was that if you do have them all together and you try something new, like she had been writing, I think it was like light PNR, paranormal romances, and then she tried a new adult something, or maybe she was writing urban fantasy without romance and then did a new adult romance. Sorry, Deanna Chase, if you're listening to it and I'm mangling up. But because she published them under her regular name, Facebook, Amazon, when they send out emails to readers who have in the past bought your stuff, be like, hey, Joe Lalo's got a new book out, and so all these readers get these email, and they're like, what is this new adult junk? I don't want to read this. Whereas Amazon's engines might have worked differently if they hadn't been connected. They would have gone out to the right readers for that kind of genre if it was selling well. So that's yeah, something to think about. You don't really want Amazon telling your readers about your cozy mystery set in the Pacific Northwest, which is a fine mystery. There's no reason why they wouldn't like it, but still. All right. A couple of kind of neat tricks that they mentioned. This one's kind of obvious, although I don't actually do it, and I was thinking I should really do this. Was that if you happen to get a BookBub ad or any kind of good ad for your free book one, make sure you update the backlinks in the book and include an excerpt of the second book at the end. And I've used excerpts in the past, but I actually should do that because I don't have that in my series, and I think that would be a good idea. Do you guys have excerpts?
Well, see, no experts at the back, but excerpts, yeah, I do. It was especially whenever I'm pushing like one of the series starters, I make sure there's a link to the back, and there's a lot of times I'll put like the first chapter back there, just as a hook to try and reel some more people in there. And actually, I've gotten a lot of good results from that.
I don't have excerpts. I should. I was thinking actually, as you were saying that it's known that the first book in my fantasy series has got a cliffhanger, and I feel like if you have a cliffhanger and you feel bad about it, you could conceivably put an excerpt just to sort of, give you a glimpse of where they're going to land if they slip off the cliff, So you can take the edge off a cliffhanger and still get the hopefully the financial impact without really leaving your fans dangling.
I was thinking of it for books where you don't have a cliffhanger. Like most of my book ones wrap up, like it's the end of the story, and you could read more if you're interested in what the characters are doing, but they wrap up enough that you don't feel like you have to read more. I was like, well, maybe I should throw in the next 10 pages and try to get them hooked on the next book. So that's on my to-do list. You all know about my to-do list. All right. Another advice I thought that was kind of cool was that this was Deanna Chase again. She started a Facebook group and invited all of the other people that were in her also bots. And the whole idea was that they would start promoting each other in their newsletters and social media and mentioning each other's new releases. I could see that being effective, especially like in something like steampunk, where there's only kind of a handful of authors that have complete series and are always in that top 40 or whatever on there. But it seems like a good idea. You get somebody else promoting your books, and I've kind of been leery about that in the past, promoting something I haven't read before. So ideally, you've actually read these other people. I could see it. Then I would go into it like wholeheartedly. But if you happen to see that the reviews are good, and they've got like more than 100 reviews, so it's not just their friends and the cat next door that left reviews, then you might be safe. And one thing she also mentioned was that if you want to appear in I think this was her or somebody else on the panel, if you want to appear in another author's also bots, like someone who's similar maybe but more popular than you, like if I want to be in Jim Butcher's also bots for that steampunk book he's had on pre-order for like 9 months, and I'm sure it's going to be a bestseller because 9 months, man. But she said to promote it to your newsletter. Like even especially if it's like on the release day, so you get your fans go out and buy 50 of your fans go out and buy this book, and then your also books, because they've also bought all your books, might appear in the top slot for that particular author on release day of a hot new book. I haven't tried that, but I thought, oh, that's really clever. I could definitely see giving that a try.
That is a brilliant idea. I'd never considered it, and it's just working the system perfectly.
And if you all want to use me and like promote my book to your readers to get in my also bots, I'm totally cool with that. All right, I've stunned the guys to silence. Okay.
I think you and I might actually already be in each other's also bots.
We are for steampunk. I don't know but sometimes though with the traditional authors, you often don't see. I mean, sometimes you do. You see indie books in the traditional authors, but a lot of times you see other traditionally published authors, and I think there are still readers out there who say, "I'm not buying indie books," or just for some reason they buy the higher priced books because they believe there's more quality, or who knows. All right, next section, rocking it with boxed sets, and some bestseller information. I kind of already talked about this in the intro, but if you're thinking of doing a multi-author box set, they said you want to make sure and get everything in writing ahead of time, kind of a mini contract where you get permission from all the authors that are going to be in your set. I think we can all attest to this. I think even Jeff had this, that Amazon will email you if you're the publisher of this box set and you're publishing other authors' works. they'll be like, hey, do you have the permission to do this? We need to see proof. So you might as well have a contract signed ahead of time and figure out the finances if it's going to be for money. If it's not a perma-free box set, will everybody contribute to the expenses? And then once you have it going and are making some money, will you do monthly payouts, or will it be all at the end? And every box set I've been in has had some people in different countries. So my strategy for this is to make sure someone else is handling the accounting and the money. So I recommend you all follow that strategy too.
Definitely a good idea to get that mini contract in place, because trust me, Amazon is not polite about saying, who the heck are you to publish something with someone else's name on it? I'm like, trust me, I have their permission. I really do. So, yeah, have something in writing. It works a lot better.
They also suggested with doing box sets to make sure and pick a really tight theme, ideally something that's popular. I said that the box set we made the list on, even though we were lucky to sell enough copies to make the list, it wasn't really the most popular. It was kind of spread out. It wasn't really focused. Like from romance, I guess billionaires are popular, shifters are popular, biker romances are popular. I don't remember. For fantasy, just probably kind of that classic epic fantasy would be really popular. Joe and I were in one last Christmas time it came out, the Epic box set, and it sold a lot of copies and did really well, but I think we just missed making the list, and
Yeah.
we did not do the pre-order, so.
Yeah, it could have been the difference.
Plus it was right before Christmas too, so these things change how many it takes to make a list. It's just depending on how many books are selling, how many other books are selling the same week. So that's obviously a time when a lot of people buying paperbacks too, and you are competing against paperbacks for these. I believe it's ebooks/paperbacks is all in there together. But the numbers they said was, well, first of all, the reporting periods. Like for the USA Today, they only report like Wednesday through Sunday, the various bookstores. So you want to figure out, you want to get all your sales in that window. And I think the New York Times Today was a little longer, something like Tuesday through Sunday. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't organized one of these, and I haven't really studied up on it. I'm just reading my notes here. They said the best way if you want to try to hit both lists is to release on a Tuesday, and this is going to be probably after you've been on pre-order for a couple months and hopefully racking up some thousands of sales ahead of time. Like I said, for the list, it's a moving target. You never know for sure how many you're going to need to make it, but they said ballpark probably need like 15,000 sales to hit the New York Times bestseller list, which I've never been anywhere near in a box set or on my own in a week. But USA Today, they said to shoot for at least 7,000 sales. And the one time I've made that on my own was with my Dragon Blood box set, 3 books for 99 cents back in January. And that was a BookBub ad that just went really well that I've not been able to duplicate again, even though I've tried. And I think I had only about 6,000 sales. I had like 1,000 some at Barnes & Noble and most of the rest at Amazon. And so that just wasn't a very competitive time because it was after Christmas, sort of mid-January, end of January. So the time of year can definitely play into that too. So yeah, if you're going to try for a list, do those pre-orders, and the first week is really key. So you get, one thing I would say with this box set, and I feel bad because I did like nothing as far as getting reviews. Some of these people really have like street teams and are gung-ho and have really loyal fans, and they can just say, hey, go out there and please leave a review of this. Here's a review copy. And gosh, we had like 100 reviews on that the first day or something. Again, not through any of my own efforts. I had a good mailing list. I sent out to my mailing list. But so if you get some really gung-ho people on there, getting reviews early on really helps. And if you get advanced review copies out to your bloggers or street teams, anybody that will review it. And these people also mentioned that Thunderclap and Head Talker campaigns can be useful. I'll try to get the links and throw those into the show notes. I haven't looked up Head Talker yet to see what that is. Thunderclap is this thing on Twitter that you can do with Twitter where you try to get 500 people, or it might be as low as 1,000. I don't remember. There's different numbers. You're trying to get like 500 people to sign up ahead of time to agree to do a tweet for you, on your release day, presumably. And if you get the number of people that your goal was, this Thunderclap will go out, and everybody's tweet goes out there at once. I remember the self-publishing podcast guys doing this for one of their books last November or something, and they kind of had mixed thoughts on how effective it was. When I've seen it done, I thought it was kind of silly because it shows up in the streams of a bunch of people you follow. It's not, if you only happen to follow one of these authors and only got it once, it would be fine, but you suddenly get this kind of spam in your feed, but something to try, something to look at maybe. Do you guys have any thoughts on or questions on box sets or bestseller stuff?
Not really.
I mean, we talk about release week being the best time. Are bestseller lists only for release week, or if for some reason you have a spectacularly good sale later on in the book's life, can you hit the bestseller list? I would assume you could.
Yeah, that's what happened to my Dragon Blood set, and I actually didn't know it was made the USA Today list until many, many months later. Somebody on Kboards was doing they were ad stacking to do a big 99-cent box set thing, and they were trying to make the list. And he showed it, and at the end he'd gotten it, and I was like, I probably had that many sales back in January. So I went and looked, and so it made it. But you definitely, if you do like BookBub and a bunch of ads, and if you're in a popular genre or like a really popular trope in fantasy, or if you're doing a box set, although I've done other box sets since then that didn't sell that well, so I don't know. Sometimes it's like the fates, something about the book description they write just really piques the interest of people. But yeah, it can happen anytime, and for most of us indies, it's going to be a 1 week only kind of thing. It's like, oh, bragging rights, I was there's all my pre-orders and stuff, and unloaded it in 1 week. So
yeah, I've got some experience with Thunderclap. I've used Thunderclap. I've been a part of 2 of them, and they don't just work with Twitter. You can use them on Facebook and Tumblr as well, and it's a mixed bag, I suppose. If you get enough people, then you could conceivably get up, be trending. But mostly, it just seems like a way to confuse your followers, because it's like, why are you suddenly advertising someone else's book? You can change the message though. So when I was doing it, I sort of made it clear in the beginning of it that this is, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours situation. I'm helping this author out because they helped me out.
Or if you really like the author's work, that always helps. You genuinely want to
legitimately like them. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, the last little topic here we'll jump right into, since we've been babbling for about an hour. The last panel that I wanted to mention was kind of a focus on iBooks. So these are sort of some tips to try to do better selling in the Apple Store. And they were mentioning that it's the second biggest market out there, which makes sense to me. Although for me, Barnes & Noble has been kind of traditionally my biggest seller. Do you guys have iBooks? Is it number 2 for you, or?
Number 2 for me would be Barnes & Noble, followed by Apple iBooks being number 3.
iBooks is number 2 from me. It passed Barnes & Noble a while back, mostly with the international sales, like with in American currency, because that's how they split up on Smashwords. They were about neck and neck, but then Apple heaps on stuff from a dozen different territories, and it comes up to considerably more in the end.
That's one thing I will say is Apple seemed to me more varied than Barnes & Noble, because there are times I have to Google to find out what the heck unit of measure or currency that is, but Barnes & Noble for me is number 2.
Yeah, Apple is my solid number 4. I would say Barnes & Noble is almost always 2, and Kobo is, since they came out with Writing Life, and probably for the last 2 years, that's probably been my number 3, sometimes even more than Barnes & Noble. And Apple right now especially is way down, so that's why I went to this panel. I was like, all right, I should put more effort into trying to get noticed on iBooks, because like they were saying, it's the second biggest market, and it's like the default option on a billion devices, they were saying. So iBooks is really committed when you think about all the phones out there, iPads, Macs, that come with the Apple Store and iBooks preloaded, that it's they're probably more committed. And like, I love Barnes & Noble. I'm glad they're making me money, but I worry about them all the time. I'm like, the store is not going to make it. I don't know. It's always bad news in the press, and so I'm going to try to do a little more with iBooks. One of the things they mentioned was actually make a specific file for iBooks and put links to your other books in the back in the iBooks store, and also to sign up for their affiliate program and use the Apple affiliate links. So I finally got around to doing that. I've been an Amazon affiliate for a long time, but I was like, all right, let's try this for iBooks, give it a shot. And one thing, I should say that the people who were on this panel were authors that sell really well in the Apple Store. So it wasn't actually an iBooks person, but these are the tactics that they'd found that were useful. And they mentioned always call it iBooks. I think we've talked about that before. Don't call it Apple. Don't call it iTunes. They like to be iBooks. Like whenever you're, if you're making a plug on Twitter or something. And they said to go ahead and do that. Do some interesting quotes or tweets with like quotes from your book, and then the iBooks link in there. You can even make an affiliate link. And that, you might even get retweeted by iBooks, but you don't want to be putting other store links in there at the same time, which I always do when I'm doing a Twitter thing. I'm like, okay, you can get this at iBooks /Kobo /Barnes & Noble. Let me see how many links I can get in this tweet. So apparently it's a good idea to make specific ones for each of the stores. And I think Kobo also will sometimes retweet you if it's a Kobo Writing Life title, so something to think about. They're actually out there watching you. And one of the points they made was that iBooks readers are actually willing to pay more for books. And they said that because if you think about it, people that buy things like iPhones, MacBooks, iPads, these are not the cheapest of these things. A MacBook's like 3 times more than a laptop. So you generally have an audience that's willing to pay more for stuff. So of course you can get places with perma-free book ones and 99-cent ebooks, but you might actually be surprised that your $5.99 ebook could also do well over there. You guys have any thoughts on any of that? What are you seeing at iBooks?
Go ahead, Joe.
Okie doke. I've been doing, like I say, it's number 2 for me, so it's a big earner. I've worked with them specifically in the past a few times, and I can attest that they're very big on branding. Like when I was selected for a book of the month, they gave me a big, literally like a usage guide for here's exactly what you need to, here's the terminology to use, here's how to place our little badge, like specifically like, design stuff. But also I have found that my higher cost books sell surprisingly well there. I was just in the iTunes because I don't have an iDevice, so I don't have iBooks. So I was looking in iTunes where you can also find your books. And it turns out that my anthology is one of the, I want to say, new and popular or something like that. Like it was on a special row along with a couple other people, which I was unaware of. And so, yeah, it seems like there's different tastes for price range on iBooks compared to other places. But yeah, I've found that they're very hands-on with promotion, particularly with indies.
Yeah, my free ones move just as fast as my most expensive ones there, so I like iBooks a lot. They do a really good job for me. And they're really nice. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I was thinking a couple of years ago, my wife was perusing through the iBook store, came across the breakout book section, and all of a sudden I hear her, "Oh my God, there's your book!" I'm like, "Really? Show me." I'm taking screen captures of it, but yeah, I really like them.
All right. Well, I should say that I've actually, I'm not bitter towards iBooks. They promoted my stuff, and I usually can find one of my books in their sci-fi and fantasy, kind of that front page you can scroll through on there. So I guess I'm surprised I don't have more sales there. Maybe one thing I found out at this panel, they were like, make sure you don't use the 3D books. I was so proud that I'd stuck my 3D image of my bundle into iTunes Producer. I've since replaced it with the 2D one because I guess they won't show that in their display on their nice little iBook store or iTunes. So 2D books even for box sets there. But I don't know, maybe I'm just doing better on Barnes & Noble and Kobo than average, but I've done better in iBooks in the past. So I am actually trying a Facebook ad right now, speaking of those, to see if I can get more people to buy the Dragon Blood box set there. That's only 99 cents still. And so basically this is an experiment called Lindsay Throws Away a Bunch of Money on Facebook Ads, because you can't not spend way more than you're going to make on a 99-cent book. Although I will say I appreciate that iBooks gives you 70% on a 99-cent book. I did not realize that until I was actually uploading directly and looking at the reports more closely than I do when they come through Smashwords. So that takes some of the sting out of those ads. All right, a couple more things, and then we'll finish up. They recommended, of course, studying the iBooks store and seeing what's selling. And they said a first in series free can definitely help. Whenever you're doing those ads, make sure the places that accept iTunes as an ad, like BookBub will take iTunes, Kobo, all those guys, make sure to fill that out so that you can get that promoted. And something I had not heard about before, but which I've since looked up and seems to be true, I'm not sure how to do this yet, so maybe you guys have tried this, but you can now request up to 250 promo codes per book. Promo codes allow you to give free copies to reviewers, bloggers, etc., to build momentum for your book. Did either of you guys know about that?
I was going to ask you about that. I saw that one. See, I didn't know you could request promo codes for your book, so yeah, I'll definitely have to investigate, see what it's going to take to get them, because I could use those, hand them out.
Yeah, I was not aware. I knew that I'd seen the option for promos on a couple of other things I'd worked on. It's possible that I saw some mention of it, but I had not been in my mind until I saw you mention it there.
Okay, I'm definitely going to look that up when I have a new release coming on iTunes, because that would be awesome. I always resent that Amazon doesn't allow you to give away free copies without actually paying for them, because I can email stuff to readers, but that totally excludes people that can't figure out, that don't know how to like sideload a book, or just they want it instantly to appear on their iPad and their Kindle, and if it doesn't, forget it. So
I should say something on the subject of giving away free copies. Two things I discovered. First off, Google Play on some months has been my second highest earner. I had 2 really good months with it recently. But Google Play allows you, it has a built-in basically eARC or review copy option. You can put people on the quality review panel for your book, and it will automatically insert it into their Google Play library and then alert them that they've received a new book. So they have built into their front end the capacity to give free copies to people before release, and that's pretty darn neat. I have not used it yet. I put myself on there to see how it works, and it works. So I might have to use that in the future for early review copy purposes.
all right, well, we want to hear more about that in the future and how you're rocking it on Google Play, but I'll definitely be asking about those promo codes. Oh, one other thing I should say with the Facebook ads, why actually iTunes, if you were going to throw away money on Facebook ads, because that's fun, who doesn't want to do that, iTunes would be a great store, or iBooks is a great store to do it on, because you can, on Facebook, you can look through the operating systems that people are using when you specify who to display your ads to, and you can hit all the people that are iPad, iPhone, Mac, MacBook, whereas I'm not sure how you would know who specifically is using Amazon, except that almost everybody goes to Amazon. Just doing Windows computers wouldn't necessarily get you Amazon shoppers, but if you're looking at someone with an iPad, it's a pretty good chance they could be buying books on iBooks easily, even if they're like me and actually buy from Amazon. But I do have a few iBooks, so.
Leave it to Facebook to track all that.
Of course. I have heard of people making money on Facebook ads if they're selling something bigger. Like if you were doing a $6.99 box set. I know Mark Dawson does a lot with that. But anyway, something to talk about in the future. Last couple notes on this was that you can now do asset list pre-orders up to a year in advance. I think we talked about this when we had Mark Coker on. So it looks like you can do that if you're uploading directly, and I think Smashwords was going to implement that. I'm not sure if they've implemented it for everybody yet.
They have about a month ago.
Okay, great. So what I was talking about before, if you want to make bestseller list, get that sucker up a year in advance, especially if obviously it needs to be a book you think you have a shot on, like maybe it's the 8th book in your popular series, and everything will finally be resolved, and all cliffhangers will be ended, and your characters will finally hook up. That's the book to try it on, I guess. All right, and the last thing was that secret, besides using affiliate links in the back of the book to track when people are buying them and make some extra money that way. Somebody in this panel said she was making more from iTunes affiliate program than she used to make at her day job. So can be effective. Obviously, she's selling a lot of books in addition to that if she's doing that.
Must be. Holy cow.
But she said some authors were not just linking to their next books, but they were making, like, this was my playlist for while I was writing this book and linking to the songs on iTunes. I was like, that is brilliant because there's more money, A, but B, I can't believe how many readers ask about that stuff, and I feel bad because I usually just listen to boring stuff or nothing. But so what I did after doing that, hearing that, was I just redid my Dragon Blood collection, and I put the link to the next book in there for an iTunes edition. And I also put a link to the audiobook, which is out with Podium Publishing and is doing pretty well. And I want to do everything I can to like try to pimp that and have it do well on Audible and iTunes. So I was like, hey, if you liked this book, you can also now get the audiobook. And I have no idea what it is for other people. I only know myself and my mother are my my only data points, but we almost only buy fiction books where we've already read the book because we know we're going to like listening to it. And I don't know if other people are that way or not. I'm going to find out when I put the book up there, see if I get any affiliate sales of that book. So something I'll report on in the future. I think that's about it for my notes there.
Nice. I think that's it for me as well.
All right. Any final words, Joe?
No, I think we covered anything useful I might have for these topics.
All right. Talked and talked. All right. So that's it for this week. And we actually have a really good guest on next week who has sold a ton of books. And if I was really high speed, I'd I'd know his name to tell you. But hopefully I'll send him an email and he will show up. We made the appointment a few weeks ago, so I've since forgotten. But I have somebody good, hopefully. And yeah, thanks for listening. Come by and see us at marketingsff.com or leave
Did you have to think about that again?
Yes, I'm going to change that domain name. Finally, I'm going to get Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast and redirect it to there. I don't care how long. If that URL is going to be in my entire browser window, I'm going to be able to say it. All right.
I just like every time you reference it, yeah, you can visit us at.
It's painful. I can't say it. If it had been sffmarketing.com, that would have been okay. I shouldn't say that, I'll confuse people. But yeah, come by the site, leave a comment if there's anything you want answered or want to see. If you haven't left a review on iTunes, we would definitely appreciate it. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. What's our channel there? Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast.
Yes, it is.
All right, Joe handles that.
Thank you to all of our recent subscribers. We had 9 new subscribers today.
Awesome. Nice. It's probably because they heard about your new camera.
Oh, yeah. They wanted to see how it looked.
Yeah, I think now we can finally keep an eye on your pretzel jar.
It'll be empty next week.
All right. On that note, I think that's everything from us. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right, you guys take it easy.